The morning the email arrived, the sky over northern Karzod was an empty sheet of paper, pale, silent, and wide open. Captain Leo Halvorsen, 41, sat cross-legged outside the canvas-flapped command tent of Recon Unit 14, stirring a powdered coffee packet into lukewarm water. Dust blew through everything here, clinging to boots, skin, and memory. Time moved differently in forward operating bases, stretching out like taut rope during watch duty, snapping back into place when mortars hit too close. He wasn't expecting the email. No soldier ever really is, even when the gut whispers otherwise. The message came in silently on the worn-out laptop that had traveled with him across deserts and mountains, logged countless after-action reports, casualty notes, and now, a death notice of a different kind. Subject: Let's be civil. Attachment: divorce_papers_Halvorsen.pdf. There were only 3 sentences in the body of the message. Leo, I've filed the paperwork. The accounts are settled. Todd has moved in. I hope you understand. That was it. No salutation. No warmth. No explanation beyond the facts. Lana, his wife of 13 years, had executed a clean extraction of herself from their marriage as if it were a mission briefing. Efficient. Detached. Leo sat still for a full minute, the only sounds around him the hum of distant engines and the soft clack of equipment being moved around camp. He read the email again, slower this time, trying to detect anything beneath the surgical precision of her words. He found nothing, no trace of the woman he had proposed to on the edge of Lake Tora after coming home from his first tour in Sofar province. No warmth from the person who used to trace circles on his back while he fell asleep. Just words. Sharp and sterile. He closed the laptop and stood. Didn't say a word. Didn't let the silence stretch. Routine was a soldier's religion, and so he followed it. Shower. Uniform. Briefing. Patrol. Another day in the dry belly of the desert, serving a mission half a world away from the life he had just lost. Later that night, back in the sleeping quarters lit only by one flickering bulb and the bluish glow of laptop screens, Leo typed a single word in response. Acknowledged. Not why, not how could you, not I still love you. Just that. A single word, formal, emotionless, and precise. Sullivan, his tent mate, looked up from polishing his sidearm. You all right? He asked, voice neutral. Leo didn't look up. Just stuff back home. Sullivan gave a nod. That was the end of it. Soldiers knew when to pry and when not to. This was the latter. Leo stared at the canvas ceiling above his bunk. His thoughts weren't of rage, or sorrow, but logistics. And perhaps that's what had made Lana grow distant in the first place, his inability to respond with rawness. But the army had trained him too well. Emotional restraint was second nature. Instead of mourning, he began assessing. Because he'd seen the signs. The last 6 months before deployment had felt off. Lana had started working late at the counseling center more often, though she wasn't a counselor, just an admin. She started taking painting classes on Wednesday nights and yoga on Saturdays. She stopped asking about his patrols. Conversations were shorter. Physical affection felt like a courtesy, not desire. Her phone developed a passcode. Her voice had grown lighter, like she was practicing detachment. There had been a new perfume once, a scent he didn't recognize lingering on her scarf. She'd brushed it off. He didn't press. He never pressed. But he wasn't blind either. Rather than confront, Leo had prepared. Quietly. Methodically. It was his nature. He started moving sentimental and legal items into a rental locker across town. His father's pilot badge from Vietnam. His mother's wedding ring, still in its velvet case. His own first commendation medal. Birth certificates, his DD-214, their marriage license, all secured in a weatherproof case inside a locked steel cabinet. He also opened an account in a different bank under a separate name, transferred small, almost imperceptible amounts from his main deposit to build a personal safety net. He wasn't expecting betrayal. But he knew, in life and in war, that it was better to plan for collapse than to be crushed by it. At the airport before deployment, Lana had hugged him, arms cool and distant. No tears. No whispered "come back to me." Just a flat "be careful, all right?" Her voice had sounded like she was telling a colleague to watch out for icy roads, not sending her husband to a war zone. He should have known then. Maybe part of him did. Still, the swiftness of it stung. He thought betrayal would come with a confrontation, a blow-up, some kind of climax. But this was just deletion. A Control+X to their shared history. Back in his cot, Leo reached beneath his bunk and pulled out a battered notebook. He started jotting down tasks, Not emotional ones, not figure out where it went wrong, but practical ones. Call Anderson, Army buddy turned defense lawyer. Check VA mortgage documents. Review pension protections. Access home security feeds. Assess exposure on shared assets. This wasn't heartbreak. This was a breach. A tactical one. And Leo knew exactly how to respond to breaches. You gather intel, establish lines of defense, and plan a counter. The first thing he did was pull up the remote surveillance software he had installed 2 years ago when break-ins had started trending in their neighborhood. It had full access to every room in the front yard, backed up on encrypted cloud servers. He watched. Todd, presumably the new man, was walking their dog. Wearing Leo's raincoat. Drinking from his favorite mug. In his kitchen. The same one Leo had remodeled by hand during leave the previous year. Lana was laughing beside him. Free. Careless. And something inside Leo froze. It wasn't anger. Not rage. Just stillness. The kind that came before a precise strike. He closed the laptop. Reopened his notebook. Added another line. Make her regret underestimating you. He didn't want revenge. He didn't want her back. What he wanted was clarity, and for her to understand that not every soldier is easy to write off with a 3-line email. Leo wasn't coming home broken. He was coming back ready. And the war? It was only just beginning. Leo didn't sleep much that night. He lay on the cot, one arm draped over his forehead, eyes locked on the canvas above him. Outside, the desert wind howled over razor wire fences, carrying sand through every open seam in the base. The barracks were quiet, save for the occasional rustle of shifting gear or someone coughing in their sleep. But Leo's mind was busy. There was no room left for grief. Lana had made sure of that. The betrayal wasn't just emotional, it was surgical. She hadn't left a mess, she had scrubbed it clean. The financial assets, the house, even the dog, all now shared with a stranger named Todd. It wasn't just abandonment. It was erasure. She had overridden him with someone else. But in erasing him, she'd overlooked one thing, Leo's discipline. She assumed, like many did, that soldiers were all impulse and reaction. What she didn't know was that Leo had spent 2 decades learning to observe, to calculate, and most importantly, to wait. By morning, Leo had already typed out a secure message to Anderson, a former military intelligence officer turned legal bulldog in civilian life. They had served together in the cliffs of Variston during Operation Sable Iron, and Anderson owed Leo his life. He was now a corporate lawyer with deep roots in both military and federal law. The subject line was simple, urgent counsel, private. By 0800, the response came in. Call me on a secure line. I'm clearing the next 2 hours. After his patrol briefing and a check-in with Logistics Command, Leo made the call from the encrypted base satellite phone. His voice was calm, almost detached, as he laid out the situation. She emptied the accounts. Moved another man into the house. Sent divorce papers by email while I was still on deployment. There was a pause. Then Anderson, ever the tactician, asked, "Did she forge anything?" "I'm not sure," Leo replied. "But she mentioned something before I left, about refinancing. I told her we didn't need to. House was already paid off through my VA benefit." "That's the angle," Anderson said immediately. "We dig there first. If she refinanced without your consent, especially using your military mortgage, that's a federal violation." Leo's grip on the phone tightened. "I want to know everything, what she took, who helped her, and how far this goes." "You'll get it," Anderson promised. "But you're going to need to play this slow. She's expecting a reaction. Don't give her one." Leo smirked. "She's already gotten silence. I'll keep giving it to her." After hanging up, Leo turned back to his mental checklist. He accessed the digital home surveillance feed again. It was early evening back in Juniper Lake. The front camera blinked on. Todd was sitting on the porch. Leo's porch. The man looked too comfortable, legs kicked up, drink in hand, wearing Leo's old army hoodie. The one Lana used to sleep in. The next camera angle showed Lana laughing inside the kitchen, cooking something, music playing in the background. It was like watching strangers live in your body. But even this was data. Proof. The cameras had captured everything, dates, appearances, timeline inconsistencies. Lana hadn't disabled the system, probably assuming Leo either forgot or wouldn't care. But she was wrong. It was his house, his system, and it was watching everything. Leo took screenshots, downloaded backups, labeled every file with date stamps. Then he took a deep breath and added to the list. Save all security footage. Archive bank account activity. Check deed modifications. Identify Todd's full name and background. That last part, he sent directly to Anderson. Within hours, the reply came. Todd Monroe. No stable employment. Multiple short-term rentals under his name. Previously involved in 2 legal disputes over property claims. Red flag. Leo's jaw tensed. So this wasn't just some passing affair. Todd had a pattern, a history. Opportunist. Possibly worse. 2 days later, more answers arrived. Anderson called again, this time with a new folder of findings. She forged your signature, Leo. Leo said nothing. She filed for a refinance loan 2 months ago. Pulled $280,000 using your name as the primary borrower. The documents have your name, but the signature is off, very close, but missing your middle initial and your characteristic stroke style. It's a forgery. Leo closed his eyes. How did it pass review? She used digital scans from old documents, stuff probably lying around your house. The bank didn't question it because your military record was clean and consistent. No red flags. She used that against you. Leo ran a hand through his hair. So what are my options? We can go civil or criminal. Civil, contest the divorce, the property division, financial restitution. Criminal, identity theft, mortgage fraud, forgery, and possible conspiracy if Todd was involved. Leo leaned back in his cot. Outside, the desert sun was beginning to scorch the edge of the sky orange. I want her to feel the pressure, he said slowly. But not yet. Let her think I'm gone. Let them both think they're safe. Then we take it all back. Anderson paused. You know, most guys would be too hurt to think clearly right now. I'm not most guys, Leo replied. That night, Leo returned to his bunk, pulled out a fresh page in his notebook, and began building a timeline, laying it out like a recon operation. Date of email. Date of refinance application. First bank withdrawal. Surveillance capture dates. Potential sale inquiries. It wasn't revenge that drove him. It was clarity. He needed to understand how far she'd gone, whether she was a victim of manipulation or a participant in something much worse. Because Lana wasn't stupid. She didn't act without reason. If she had done this, it meant she had either been seduced or corrupted, and both were dangerous. A week later, another alert came in. A withdrawal. $14,000 transferred from a secondary account tied to the refinance. The recipient? A company named Volin Realty Solutions. Leo sent the name to Anderson. 5 hours later, the answer came back. Volin Realty is run by a man named Curtis Weller. And guess what? Todd Monroe has worked for him. The pieces are connecting. Leo felt the shift then, not emotional, but operational. This wasn't just a cheating spouse. This was a scheme. One that had used his service, his trust, and his identity to run a play. He looked at his checklist again. One more thing to add. Initiate investigation into financial exploitation of military personnel. This wasn't about Lana anymore. Not entirely. It was about how many others had fallen for this. And how many could still be saved if he got it right. The rain came hard the day Leo returned to American soil. Not in a cinematic, welcoming way, but as a cold slap of reality. He stepped off the tarmac at Rainfield Air Base, the Pacific Northwest sky weeping in thick, gray sheets. His boots hit American ground without ceremony, without anyone waiting for him. No hugs. No signs. No homecoming. Just a duffel bag and a rented SUV waiting in a lot half a mile away. He didn't go to his house in Juniper Lake. Not yet. Instead, he checked into a small motel 20 minutes outside town under a different name, Mason Trent. The place was old, quiet, and anonymous. Just what he needed. James Anderson, his lawyer and former squad mate, met him at a roadside diner nearby. Leo was already seated in the corner booth, black coffee steaming in front of him, hands wrapped around the cup as if to ground himself. "You look like hell," James said, sliding into the seat across from him. "I feel like paperwork," Leo muttered. James slid a folder across the table. "Then this will fit right in." Inside was everything Leo needed, and more than he wanted to know. Pages of bank statements, loan documents, surveillance photos, even a copy of a signature side-by-side comparison, Leo's real one, and the one forged on the refinance application. Middle initials wrong. Stroke pressures inconsistent. A decent job, but not good enough to fool a handwriting analyst, James explained. It's legally actionable. Leo flipped slowly through the evidence. Page after page, line after line, showing exactly how his wife had sold out not just their marriage, but his name. "She really did it," Leo said quietly. She forged it. Pulled out almost $300K against a house that was mine before I even met her. And it gets better, James said, flipping to a highlighted section. The co-applicant on the loan? Todd Monroe. Your wife listed him as a financial contributor. Leo's jaw clenched. He has a criminal record. 2 DUIs. A small business fraud charge from 2019. Nothing major, but enough to make him radioactive for any real lending institution. Which means the bank overlooked protocol. They saw my military credentials and rubber-stamped the rest, Leo muttered. Exactly. Leo sat back, the weight of it all settling on his chest. He'd spent half his life in the service. 2 deployments in East Razor, one in Old Sofra, and another to the coalition peacekeeping mission in Langres. He'd been ambushed, shelled, and once even half buried under a collapsed watch post. But betrayal? This kind of betrayal? It was quiet. Surgical. It didn't bleed, it bled you dry. James was still talking. The funds started moving 2 weeks after you deployed. At first in small chunks, $2,000, $3,000, to a second account in her name. Then it got bold. $14,600 went to a company called Keller Real Holdings. Leo frowned. Real estate? Exactly. Keller Real Holdings is fronted by a guy named Darren Spence. You ever heard of him? No. You will. Because Todd Monroe has worked with him before. 3 transactions in the last 2 years. All under similar conditions, homes owned by military personnel. All sold under market value. All expedited deals to cash buyers. Leo's eyes narrowed. You think it's a ring? I don't think, Leo. I know. James reached into his bag and pulled out a second folder, thinner than the first but more dangerous. Inside were 3 case summaries, all eerily similar: soldier deploys, spouse left behind, new boyfriend arrives, property refinanced and sold quickly, money funneled out, spouse ends up with nothing. In each case, the names were different. The locations varied. But one constant appeared in the transaction chain: Darren Spence. And more often than not, Todd Monroe. Leo's stomach turned, not from anger but from realization. This isn't just me. This is a pattern. And your case? It's the cleanest thread. We've got documents, surveillance, motive, and now a financial trail. I've already spoken to a contact at the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. They've been building a case quietly, waiting for something solid. You're it. Leo exhaled slowly. His mind flashed back to those dusty nights in Carzode, staring at security footage while Lana danced in their kitchen with someone else. He thought it had just been personal betrayal. Now he realized it was something colder: business. They used me, he said. Used the uniform, the distance, the trust. James nodded. And not just you. 11 families, maybe more. We're still digging. Leo flipped back through the documents. One name jumped out: Daniel Marks. He'd appeared in 2 other transactions, listed as a buyer. In both cases, the selling spouse had been recently divorced from someone deployed. These buyers, Leo asked. You think they're in on it? Some knowingly. Some probably not. But the pattern is clear. Monroe gets close to a woman whose husband is away, convinces her to refinance or sell, pulls the cash out, takes a cut, and then moves on. And Lana? James paused. Hard to say. She might have believed his story. That you were hiding money. That you'd leave her broke. But she still signed the documents. Still forged your name. Still took the house. Leo sat quietly for a long moment. So what now? Now we trigger the trap. James laid out the next steps. Leo would make no direct contact with Lana. No confrontations. The FBI would continue gathering evidence quietly. Leo would submit an affidavit contesting the refinance on grounds of forgery and fraud. The funds from the mortgage would be frozen. Any attempted sale of the property would be flagged. A civil suit would follow: financial recovery, asset reassessment. And if she tries to run? Leo asked. She won't get far. Her new partner is already on the radar. If we get them discussing the deal, on camera, on recording, it seals it. Leo nodded. We'll get it. The next morning, Leo returned to his motel and logged into the home security system. It was early evening in Juniper Lake. Lana's car was gone. 15 minutes later, a van pulled into the driveway, logoed with Pacific Crest Realty. Leo's pulse ticked up. The man who stepped out matched the ID photo of Darren Spence. Then Todd Monroe appeared on screen. They shook hands, chatted briefly, then went inside. Leo opened the interior feed. The living room came into view. Spence was taking photographs. Todd was pointing at fixtures. "I've got a buyer ready," Spence said. "Offer will come in around 410. We'll list at 445. "And the husband?" Todd asked. Spence scoffed. "Military guys? They make noise, but in the end they just want it to go away. It's all procedure to them." Leo hit record. Forwarded the feed to James. Then he picked up his phone and texted the FBI contact. "Live footage. Fraud in progress. Sending link." By nightfall, federal agents had everything they needed. But Leo? He was just getting started. The following 48 hours unfolded with surgical precision, the kind Leo had once reserved for coordinating night raids behind enemy lines. Only now, the enemy wasn't an insurgent cell, it was something far more personal, embedded right inside the walls of what had once been his home. Leo remained holed up in his motel, the same bare-bones room with beige curtains and a faint mildew smell. On the coffee table in front of him, 2 phones, a laptop connected to his cloud surveillance system, and a notepad scribbled with timelines and contact numbers. The soft hum of the refrigerator was the only sound in the room as he watched the video feed like a hawk, camera angles from his own living room, entryway, and backyard. He didn't sleep. He barely blinked. James arrived early the next morning with coffee and a calm, focused energy. The kind of energy you got from a man who'd been on both sides of a firefight and knew which side had the advantage. "They're meeting again today," Leo said, without looking away from the screen. "Who?" "Lena and Todd. She thinks I'm meeting her downtown, wants to talk things through." His voice was dry with contempt. "So while she's waiting for a man who won't show, her little partner will be welcoming our good friend Darren Spence for a second walkthrough." James raised an eyebrow. "You're sure they'll meet again today? I watched the exterior cameras. Spence left yesterday with a smile on his face. He said they'd list by Friday. He's coming back to stage the place. And you'll catch it all?" Leo turned the laptop toward James. "Every word. Every photo. Every fraudulent promise." At 9:42 a.m., the driveway camera blinked to life. Darren Spence's silver Audi pulled up to the curb, parking behind Todd's rusted Jeep. 2 men emerged. Todd and Spence exchanged a handshake, then walked into the house. Just as Leo predicted. "Interior cam is hot," Leo said. Seconds later, the living room came into view. Spence opened a black folder, laying out listing paperwork on the kitchen counter. Todd fetched 2 mugs of coffee, one of which Leo recognized with a twist of bitterness. It had been his. A gift from his brother when he got promoted to captain. "Here we go," James muttered, as he hit record on his own phone to back up the live feed. The audio came through clearly. "Spence, we'll list at 445, but I've got a cash buyer at 410 ready to go. They know it's a military asset, so we're pricing it to move fast." Todd, "And if he comes back? The husband?" Spence, "He won't. Military types are too slow. They'll go the legal route, lots of red tape. By the time anything moves, it'll be sold, and we'll be long gone." Todd laughs. "That's the plan, right?" Leo didn't say a word. Just leaned back and forwarded the full footage to Agent Monroe at the FBI's Financial Crimes Division with a single message. "Happening now. Clear evidence. You said you needed a pattern. You have it." 35 minutes later, Leo's laptop pinged. Monroe had responded. "Confirmed. Field offices mobilizing. Hold tight." Leo stood, stretched, and finally allowed himself a slow breath. "Let's go for a drive," he said to James. "I want to see it with my own eyes." They parked 2 blocks down from the house. It was still a familiar sight, white siding, the porch swing he had installed with his bare hands, the yard now slightly overgrown. A black SUV rolled by slowly, and James pointed it out. "Unmarked. That's them." Another car arrived, then 2 more. Moments later, the entire street lit up with a sudden swarm of black-jacketed FBI agents. Leo watched from the distance as Darren Spence was led out of the house in handcuffs, a look of stunned disbelief frozen on his face. Todd followed shortly after, mouth moving rapidly, probably trying to explain away what was happening. Lana's car appeared seconds later, skidding into the driveway. She jumped out, frantic, confusion clear in her body language as she approached the front steps, only to be stopped by agents with badges and clipboards. "She has no idea what just hit her," James said. Leo didn't answer. He couldn't look away. There was a hollowness in his chest, not satisfaction, not even revenge. Just clarity. Confirmation. Closure, maybe. The house had become a crime scene. Boxes of documents were carried out. The real estate signs, already prepped and hidden in the garage, were confiscated. A camera flash lit up the interior. Lana stood on the lawn, face in her hands. That night, Leo got the call. "We got them on wire fraud, mortgage fraud, conspiracy, and attempted property theft," Agent Monroe said. "And more's coming. Their devices are gold mines." "What about her?" Leo asked. There was a pause on the line. "She signed the forged documents, but whether she knew the full scheme is unclear." "That's where you come in." Leo sat in silence, processing. "We're prepared to offer her a deal: return of funds, full confession, forfeiture of any claim to your home or pension. In return, we don't press criminal charges." "That's your call." It should have been an easy answer. But 13 years didn't vanish in a flash drive. Leo closed his eyes and remembered the first time he kissed her, under a flickering diner light during a blizzard. He remembered how proud she had once been of his service. And then he remembered her laughter on the surveillance footage, in the house he built, with a man who wore his clothes and used his mug. "I want everything back," Leo said. "Every cent. Every right. And if she agrees? Then I walk away. No criminal charges. Just the truth." 3 weeks later, the paperwork was signed. Lana confessed to forging the documents under emotional distress, blamed Todd for pressuring her. Whether or not she was telling the truth, Leo didn't care anymore. She relinquished all claims to the property, to his pension, and agreed to pay restitution using what remained of the refinance payout. The divorce was finalized shortly after. No trial. No drama. Just signatures. And when Leo left the courthouse, he didn't look back. Not once. Later that year, Agent Monroe called with one last update. "Spence got 12 years. Todd took a deal for 8. We found records of them trying this with at least 11 other military families." Leo stared out the window of his small rental in the hills beyond Juniper Lake. He didn't say anything for a while. "Your case broke it open," Monroe added. "Those other families may get their homes and money back because of you." Leo's voice was quiet. "That's something." That night, he stood on the porch, letting the cool air roll across his skin. The weight on his shoulders had shifted, less like a burden now, more like armor he no longer needed. The war was over. And he won. A year after the last court document was signed and stamped, Leo Halvorsen stood on the porch of his new home, a modest wooden cabin nestled deep in the foothills of Flat River Valley, Montana. The early morning sun bled gently through the tree canopy, dappling the porch with gold. The only sounds were the trickle of the nearby creek and the quiet breath of his dog, Scout, a German shepherd curled at his feet. The cabin wasn't much. 2 bedrooms, a narrow kitchen, a fireplace built of stacked river stone, and 10 acres of untouched land. But it was his, paid for in full, under his name only. No paperwork shared. No names on a deed but his. And most importantly, no ghosts. He had sold the house in Juniper Lake 6 months prior. Even after reclaiming it through legal channels, Leo couldn't bring himself to step foot inside again. The walls felt poisoned. The kitchen had her laughter baked into its tile, and the bedroom held shadows that even sunlight couldn't chase out. Letting it go wasn't a loss, it was liberation. After finalizing the sale, Leo used the remaining restitution money, his military pension, and some savings to find solitude among the trees. The realtor had raised an eyebrow at the location: no cell service, no neighbors for miles, just deer trails and silence. That was exactly the point. He didn't need noise anymore. He needed quiet. Something that couldn't be stolen. Something honest. Every morning since he moved in, Leo followed the same routine: wake before the sun, brew coffee, walk the perimeter with Scout, then spend the rest of the day working with his hands. Carpentry had become his therapy. He crafted tables, chairs, and sometimes custom pieces for the town's local market. No pressure. No deadlines. Just sawdust and peace. He had taken an early retirement from the Army 6 months after the legal war with Lana and the real estate fraudsters had ended. 20 years of service. Enough time in deserts and jungles, watching life evaporate from both comrades and enemies. He'd given his prime years to his country. Now, he wanted the remainder to belong to himself. He no longer wore the uniform. But the discipline remained. Every document was now stored in a fireproof safe. Every financial account had a digital monitor. His identity was Loctite with 2-factor security, and his property was registered with flags at every level: local, state, federal. If anyone tried to move against him again, they'd find a wall, not a door. Still, not everything could be locked away. Some nights, the memories returned. Not of war, oddly enough, but of betrayal. He'd see Lana's face at the airport, calm and indifferent, and wonder how long she had been planning her escape. Other nights, it was the grainy footage of Todd wearing his sweatshirt and drinking from his mug. But most often, it was the sound of silence. The kind he used to crave overseas, but which now carried a different weight. One evening, Leo was fixing the hinges on an old bench he'd found by the creek when Scout barked twice and trotted toward the mailbox at the edge of the dirt road. A rare event, mail didn't come often this far out. Inside the small metal box was a single envelope, addressed in neat handwriting. No return address. He opened it cautiously, half expecting legal spam. Inside was a letter. Captain Halvorsen. You don't know me, but I wanted to thank you. My name is Elise McKinnon. My husband, Jacob, is stationed in Okinawa with the Navy. About a year ago, we almost lost our home. A man named Aaron Spence tried to push me into selling it. Said we were sitting on equity, and I was missing an opportunity. When I hesitated, he came back with another man, said he worked in military family services. Something about it didn't feel right. Then one day, an agent from the FBI knocked on my door. She showed me your case file and said, "You have this man to thank. Because of you, we kept our home. You didn't just fight for yourself, you fought for all of us. Thank you." The letter wasn't long, but Leo read it 3 times. Then a fourth. He folded it carefully and pinned it to the corkboard in his kitchen, beside a faded photo of his old recon unit and a snapshot of Scout as a pup. He stared at it for a long moment, then smiled, soft, almost reluctant. He hadn't set out to be anyone's hero. He just wanted what was his. Justice. Fairness. The basics. But sometimes, doing the right thing for yourself ends up doing something bigger for others. And that mattered. Later that week, James called. "Guess who's still in prison?" Leo chuckled. "Let me guess. Monroe and Spence." Bingo. Spence tried to appeal. Denied last week. Turns out there's a fresh investigation into 3 more families in Oregon. Pattern matches yours. Good. Let it all burn behind them. James paused. "And Lana?" Leo exhaled slowly. "Don't know. Don't really want to." James didn't press. "You ever think about coming back this way?" Leo looked out at the treetops swaying in the wind. "No. I think I found my peace." After they hung up, Leo poured himself a glass of whiskey, walked outside, and sat on the porch beside Scout. The sky was turning orange behind the hills, and the air carried the crispness of oncoming fall. He took a sip, then said aloud, "We made it." Scout wagged his tail, head resting against Leo's boot. There would be no more surveillance footage. No more forged signatures. No more betrayal in the walls. Just a quiet creek, some hand-built furniture, a well-worn dog, and a second chance. Leo didn't need revenge. Didn't need closure from Lana. He didn't even need forgiveness for not seeing it coming. What he had now was better. His own life. His own rules. And no one could ever take it from him again.